On the other side of the Atlantic, once thriving sea trout and Atlantic salmon fisheries in Scotland and Ireland have also been decimated by the Norwegian salmon farming industry.
Anyone who's been to Ireland, who's familiar with some of the most magnificent fly fishing rivers in the world, and they go in from Killary Harbour into Connemara, some magnificent terrain. All of those rivers have been decimated.
Despite a perpetual injunction by the High Court and a subsequent appeals body ruling to prevent salmon farming activities near Duanmore in County Donegal, Marine Harvest Ireland continues to pressure officials to open this location to their salmon farming operations.
They continue to come. They still want to be there. They will not listen to the courts. They will not listen to the environmental impact assessments. They will not listen to the highest appeals tribunal that exists in this industry. So what will they listen to?
We hardly catch a sea trout now. Mostly young finnick we catch. The finnick that we are catching, you have to see the numbers of lice on the fish to believe. It doesn't seem to matter what good scientific data we come up with. The salmon industry are still in denial.
In Scotland, Cermaq's subsidiary Mainstream announced it was vacating 4 Scottish fish farms in Shetland due to sea lice infestation earlier this year. The news followed the discovery of 2 outbreaks of the deadly disease known as infectious salmon anemia, or ISA, detected in January and March 2009. While ISA does not affect humans, the death rate to infected wild and farmed Atlantic salmon can approach 100%. Despite some measures by the government to control the spread of the disease, 6 farm sites in Shetland have been infected with ISA so far in 2009. Nowhere are the industry's environmental problems more evident than in Chile, which just a few years ago produced 1 out of every 5 farmed salmon sold in the world. Now the industry here is in shambles. In 2008, Norwegian multinationals reported hundreds of millions of dollars in global losses due to a devastating outbreak of ISA in Chile, unleashed on local fish from poor management practices and non-existent environmental controls.
Operating revenues are down, mainly because of weaker prices and lower volumes, and that's because of Chile.
Led us to a net earnings for the company of minus 2.8 billion NOK. A dramatic result, which we of course are very, very disappointed for.
In the lakes region of southern Chile, where breathtaking Andean vistas are dotted with salmon farms, the ecological devastation is hidden beneath the water's surface. Near the village of Cochamo, a scientific team from conservation group Oceana Chile explored the seabed beneath some recently closed farms using a remote-operated underwater camera.
It's only some mud with very few life because the typical animals cannot stand the still low oxygen conditions, and therefore we cannot see marine life here on these floors. The floor is really like a desert. This is what is left after fish farming. So it takes a long time to recover from all this damage. 5-10 years or even more.
This area is the headquarters for Chile's once booming salmon farming industry. The ISA disease wiped out 3/4 of farmed salmon stocks, but those hardest hit by this collapse are the local communities, which are left with the environmental damage and massive layoffs, as many as 20,000 in the past 2 years.
Se hace harto complicado estar sin trabajo porque uno que tiene hijos ya llevamos 5 meses sin trabajo. Segurse en la pesca porque llegó el lice que le llaman, eso fue el que destruyó esto.
Dr. Alejandro Bushman of La Universidad de los Lagos explained the key environmental problems associated with salmon farming in Chile.
We have problems that maybe are connections with algal blooms that also are connected with excess nitrogen in the water. There is issues about the use of antibiotics, the use of anti-fouling and copper paintings to reduce fouling organisms.
The nonprofit group Oceana Chile recently obtained data from the Chilean Ministry of Economy confirming the excessive use of antibiotics in Chilean farmed salmon. According to the minister's report, Chilean farming operations used almost 600 times more antibiotics than the larger operations in Norway.
Not only big salmon farms, but also in many sites, very crowded number of farms using the same water bodies. So if a disease started to appear, viruses or any pathogens, also sea lices, can be transported, can be contaminating other farms. So the spreading of diseases become a big issue. I really hope that we have learned the lesson in Chile that the environment is not infinite. We cannot just increase production without taking account the vulnerability that coastal system has.
This shellfish diver from the island of Chiloé has been dealing with pollution from nearby salmon farms for years. Though he's glad to finally see them gone due to the ISA outbreak, much of their garbage remains.
Y aquí llegan a la playa, varan, quedan ahí, nadie los recoge. Se han hecho denuncias, pero nadie hace caso, autoridades. También vamos a ver cuánto dura la contaminación, ¿ya? ¿Cuánto tiempo?
The president of an artisanal fishermen's union discussed the impacts of the salmon farming crisis on his hard-hit town of Quellón.
Radica en un desgaste social, hay una cierta crisis psicológica de parte de la gente que ha caído en el alcohol, han sido trabajadores de la industria salmonera.
But even before the crisis, these companies were not good social actors in Chile. Many divers working in the Chilean salmon farming industry have died in the past several years from unsafe working conditions.
Hay buzos mariscadores que han sufrido accidentes en el mar, han muerto enredados en las redes y después de eso nadie se hace cargo. Y nosotros como organizaciones sindicales tenemos que ir en apoyo de esa gente, comprarle las urnas cuando la gente muere, ayudarlos después a conseguirle sillas de ruedas, a conseguirle terapia.
This indigenous Mapuche community near Puerto Montt, Chile, is dominated by 5 large fish feed factories, whose effluent and exhaust pollute their farms and water. Many of these farms and factories now sit abandoned and dismantled on the foreshores and beaches of the region. Meanwhile, the Norwegian industry continues to ignore the possibility that it may have exported the deadly ISA virus to Chile, leading to this crisis, as the journal Archives of Virology recently explored. And the industry continues to pass the blame onto the Chilean government, ignoring the role it played in lowering environmental standards to boost profits.
A company like Cermaq should always comply to the regulation and rules in each country of operation, and that Cermaq does that.
There were several claims that the country or the government did not regulate enough. Okay, that's true. But it's also relevant to say that the companies did also make a very strong lobby against regulations. So at the end, you have a weak government, and on the other side, you have strong pressure from companies.
Conservationists and labor leaders alike are pressuring these companies to take responsibility for the industry's collapse and to rebuild it more sustainably.